The farm was paying one truck to carry spoiled pears away, and another truck to bring duck feed in. Claire Bell noticed them passing each other at the gate. One was leaving with fruit the orchard could not sell. The other was arriving with food for a flock the farm already owned. She stood beside the packing shed and watched both trucks disappear in opposite directions. Then she asked a question that sounded almost too simple. What if those two trucks did not have to make quite so many trips? By late October, the pear harvest on the Hammond farm in western Oregon was almost finished. The good fruit had gone into bins, cool storage, and packing orders. What remained under the trees was a different crop entirely. Windfall pears lay in the grass. Bruised fruit had split along the shoulders. Some pears had been pecked by birds. Others had dropped too early or been knocked down during picking. A few were still firm. Many were already soft enough to collapse under a boot. The farm had always treated that fruit as a cleanup problem. Crews collected what they could. A loader moved the worst piles. A flail mower chopped some of the residue. Full coal bins went to a commercial composting site off the property. None of those jobs was outrageous on its own. That was why no one had paid much attention to the total. But Claire did. She had been hired 2 years earlier to coordinate the farm's small poultry operation and help with post-harvest planning. The Hammonds grew pears on just under 100 acres. They also kept a flock of laying ducks on rented pasture a few miles away and sold the eggs through local stores and weekend markets. The orchard and the ducks had separate schedules, separate invoices, separate labor routines, and separate problems. The orchard paid to deal with fruit it could not sell. The ducks ate a purchased ration every day. The orchard needed vegetation controlled between rows after harvest. The duck pasture needed mowing, fencing, water, and rent. The orchard lost nutrients when damaged fruit was hauled away. The ducks concentrated manure in one place where it had to be managed. Nothing about those facts was hidden. They were simply filed under different parts of the business. That separation had become expensive in ways that were easy to miss. The coal trailer was billed to orchard cleanup. The composting fee sat under waste handling. Diesel disappeared into equipment. Duck feed went to poultry. Pasture rent went somewhere else again. If one cost rose, the farm manager adjusted that line and moved on. No single invoice looked alarming enough to force a larger conversation. Claire began laying the numbers beside one another. She pulled 3 months of feed receipts. Then she found the hauling tickets from the previous pear season. She checked how many loader hours had been charged during cleanup, and how many days the poultry crew had spent mowing and maintaining rented pasture after the ducks had already eaten it down. She was not looking for a miracle savings. She was looking for overlap. A farm could lose money through duplication without any one job being badly managed. The orchard crew could do excellent cleanup. The poultry crew could manage the flock well. The hauling company could be efficient. The feed could be properly formulated. And the whole operation could still pay twice because useful material on one side of the business never reached a need on the other. Claire had learned to distrust that kind of separation. Before coming to the Hammond farm, she had worked one season at a produce distribution warehouse. Every afternoon she watched pallets of rejected vegetables and damaged fruit leave through a side door. Later, while managing poultry, she watched feed arrive by the ton. The two systems never met. At the Hammond farm, she began wondering whether they should. Her first proposal was modest. After harvest, she wanted to move a little over 200 laying ducks into one 7-acre pear block for a short rotation. They would have portable fencing, mobile shelter, clean water, and their normal supplemental ration. They would enter only after market fruit was gone and leave long before the next harvest. The goal was not to make the ducks live on pears. The goal was to see whether normal duck behavior could make several post-harvest jobs smaller at the same time. Before she gave the plan to Tom, Claire forced herself to write down what would make the trial fail. If the birds damaged wet soil, the rotation would stop. If portable fencing interfered with irrigation hardware, the paddock would move. If predator losses increased, protection had to change before expansion. If feed use did not move, she would not claim a feed benefit. If egg production dropped, she would count that loss against the trial. And if the system depended on unpaid hours that nobody could sustain at commercial scale, those hours belonged in the cost. She also kept the timing narrow. The ducks would not share a block with fruit being harvested for sale. They would enter after picking and leave well before the next crop. Clean water and normal ration would remain available. Fallen fruit was forage, not a complete diet. That list made the idea less exciting. It also made it testable. Tom Hammond, the owner, read Claire's one-page trial plan twice. Then he looked out the office window toward the orchard. "Ducks under pear trees," he said. Claire nodded. "You realize they have feet, not tiny accounting degrees. That's why I want a trial instead of a theory." Tom set the paper down. He was not hostile to new ideas. He was hostile to ideas that arrived with a new set of chores no one had budgeted for. He asked about fencing. Claire had a price. He asked about predators. She had a plan. He asked about water, shelter, feed, food safety timing, bird health, damaged irrigation lines, and what happened if the ground became too wet. Claire had answers for some of those questions and honest blanks for the rest. That helped more than pretending the system was simple. Tom finally pointed to a block near the lower end of the property. 7 acres. 1 fall. You log the labor. All of it. And if the birds turn the rows into mud, we stop. Agreed. The trial began 4 days after the last marketable pears left that block. Claire expected the ducks to notice the fallen fruit immediately. They did not. The birds came out of the mobile shelter, formed a noisy cluster around the water trough, and spent most of the first morning exploring the fence line. A few pecked at softened pears. Most ignored them. By afternoon, the grass around the water had become a churned ring of mud. The next morning was worse. The orchard floor itself was still firm enough to walk, but the ducks kept returning to the same wet spot. Their feet pressed the soil flat. Water splashed out of the trough. A shallow puddle spread beneath it. Tom drove past slowly in the utility vehicle. He did not say anything. He did not need to. Claire had promised the ducks would reduce problems, not create a new one shaped like a pond. Her first design had failed for a very ordinary reason. She had thought about where the ducks would forage. She had not thought enough about where they would stand. That afternoon, she changed the layout. She replaced the large stationary trough with smaller low containers mounted on a light towable skid. She narrowed the paddocks so the flock would use more of the row space. She moved water more often. She shortened the time spent in each section. And instead of opening the shelter beside the same gathering point every morning, she shifted the birds forward with the rotation. The effect was immediate. The mud stopped deepening in one place. The flock spread out. Then the ducks found the pears. They did not consume them neatly. They tore at soft flesh. They opened split fruit. They worked around the edges of damaged pears and followed insects that moved through the wet grass. Slugs disappeared wherever the flock lingered. Seed heads were clipped. Low weeds were pressed down or eaten. The ground did not become clean. It became disturbed. That distinction mattered. Claire was not trying to create a polished orchard floor. She was trying to reduce the amount of material that still required a machine, a crew, or a truck after the birds were gone. So she began tracking the jobs, not just the ducks. She recorded how many coal bins left the trial block. She logged loader hours. She tracked how often the flail mower entered the block. She compared feed use during the rotation with normal feed use on pasture. She recorded egg counts and every extra hour spent moving fence, water, and shelter. To keep herself from choosing only favorable comparisons, she used the same categories in the nearby conventional block. If the orchard crew made a loader pass there, she logged it. If rain delayed work, she noted the delay instead of pretending the ducks had caused it. If the poultry crew spent an extra half hour repairing fence, that half hour stayed with the duck system. She wanted the comparison to survive the moment someone stopped being polite about the idea. She also kept a page titled, "Reasons This Might Not Be Worth It." The page filled quickly. The first week exposed another problem Claire had underestimated. Ducks could make good use of a paddock without distributing themselves evenly inside it. The flock liked edges. They liked the shade beside one hedgerow. They liked the damp strip near the swale. If Claire let them choose every resting place, the birds could leave half the available forage untouched, while overworking the easiest corner. So the rotation became less about opening a fence and more about shaping movement. She used narrower lanes. She placed water where she wanted the flock to travel, then moved it before the soil began to break down. She stopped treating the shelter as a fixed home and started treating it as part of the grazing pattern. That changed her labor estimate again. The system demanded attention at the exact moments a conventional cleanup tool did not. A mower could be parked after use. A flock had to be checked morning and evening, whether the trial looked promising or foolish. Moving water took longer than expected. Portable fencing was easy on straight rows and awkward near a drainage swale. A fox tested the perimeter twice in 1 week. 2 ducks developed foot problems and had to be removed from the rotation for care. One corner of the block had so little fallen fruit that the flock gained almost nothing from being there. And every time the ducks moved, someone had to move them. There was no automatic setting for that. By the 3rd week, Tom had stopped making jokes about accounting degrees. He had also stopped calling the trial cheap. Labor was the question neither of them could ignore. Then the weather changed. A Pacific storm moved through the valley and stayed. Rain fell for most of 3 days. The lower orchard softened. Tire tracks filled with water. The farm's crew finished 1 cleanup pass in the upper blocks. But Tom delayed the heavier equipment near the drainage swale. The following morning, he tried the tractor anyway. It crossed the first 2 rows without trouble. At the 3rd, one rear tire dropped into soft ground and started cutting a rut. Tom stopped before he buried it. He backed out slowly and parked on the lane. Across the block, Claire was moving the duck fence forward by 1 row. The flock followed her on foot. The ducks were not magic. Wet ground still mattered. Claire had to keep them from congregating. She had to protect the soil surface. She could not leave them in one place, simply because a tractor could not enter. But the work had a different relationship with the weather. The flock could keep moving through conditions that made a heavy cleanup pass risky. That was the first moment the trial stopped looking like a poultry experiment and started looking like a farm system experiment. The distinction became clearer in November. When Claire compared the trial block with a similar harvested block managed in the normal way, she did not find one spectacular result. She found several smaller ones. The trial block sent fewer full cull bins off the property. The loader spent less time gathering softened fruit. The mower still ran, but it made fewer cleanup passes. Purchased feed use dipped during the strongest foraging days, while egg production remained within the farm's normal range. The ducks spread manure across the rows instead of concentrating it on the rented pasture. And because the flock had already broken up much of the fallen fruit, the final mechanical cleanup was faster. Claire also compared the evidence she trusted with the evidence she did not yet trust. The hauling tickets were real. The feed receipts were real. The loader hours were real. The egg counts were real. She could see where labor had increased and where machine time had fallen. The biological claims were harder. One season could not tell her whether insect pressure would be meaningfully different the following year. A soil sample could not prove that a few weeks of distributed manure had transformed fertility. The birds clearly changed the orchard floor, but change did not automatically mean improved. So she left those benefits out of the first economic case. That choice irritated Tom almost as much as the labor number. "If we're doing all this, shouldn't we count the soil?" he asked. "Not until I can defend the number." The trial already had enough moving parts. Claire did not need to make the ducks more impressive than the records allowed. None of those changes was large enough to justify the system by itself. Together, they changed the question. Tom had originally asked whether ducks could replace orchard cleanup. Claire's records showed that was the wrong test. The ducks did not replace cleanup. They changed how much cleanup remained. They did not replace feed. They changed how much feed the flock needed during a useful part of the season. They did not replace mowing, fertility management, predator control, or food safety planning. They shifted pressure across all of them. At the December budget meeting, Claire put the orchard expenses on one side of a legal pad and the poultry expenses on the other. Tom leaned over the table. "Tell me the part you actually trust," he said. Claire tapped the page. "I trust the labor number because it hurt. I trust the hauling number because we have the tickets. I trust the feed number because we bought less. I trust the egg count because it didn't collapse. And what don't you trust yet? Whether the soil benefit is meaningful after one season. Whether the pest effect is large enough to matter next year. Whether this still works if the flock doubles." Tom nodded. "So we're not calling it a success." Claire looked at the total. "We're calling it useful enough to test again." That was a harder answer to celebrate. It was also a better one. The second season began with fewer surprises. Claire did not expand immediately. She changed the water system first. The towable skid became lighter. The fence layout followed the row geometry instead of fighting it. She marked areas that were too wet, too sparse, or too close to irrigation hardware for the ducks to use efficiently. Only then did she increase the rotation to several blocks. One of them worked beautifully. One did not. The poor block had less dropped fruit and heavier shade. The birds spent more time resting and less time foraging. Moving them there saved little feed and almost no cleanup labor. Claire ended the rotation early. That decision mattered as much as any favorable number. A system that could not tell her where it failed was not a system she could manage. By then, a neighboring pear grower had heard about the trial and asked to watch a move. He came on a cold morning expecting something complicated. What he saw was mostly gates, low fencing, water ducks, and Claire checking the ground with the toe of her boot. He tried a smaller flock on his own property later that season. After 6 weeks, he stopped. His fields were spread farther apart. His labor was already tight, and moving the birds cost more time than the cleanup he was trying to avoid. Claire was pleased by the result. Tom was confused. "You're happy it didn't work for him?" "I'm happy we know why." The value of the idea was becoming more precise. It worked best where harvested blocks were close together. Fallen fruit was abundant enough to justify foraging. Water could be moved easily. Soil conditions could tolerate the birds, and someone had the time and discipline to rotate them. Outside those conditions, the ducks were just another job. Inside them, they connected jobs the farm had been paying for separately. Then the Hammond farm lost its rented duck pasture. The landowner sold the property in spring, and the new owner did not renew the agreement. For years, the poultry operation had depended on that pasture, because no one had considered the orchard usable poultry ground. Now, for part of the year, it was. The farm still needed other housing and grazing arrangements outside the post-harvest window. The orchard rotation did not solve 12 months of land access, but it solved enough weeks to buy time. That changed the economics more than the first trial had. The ducks were no longer only reducing selected orchard costs. They were also using land the farm already controlled during a period when the crop was off the trees and the rows had work available. Tom began planning the next fall differently. Instead of asking Claire where the ducks could be kept out of the way, he asked which blocks would be ready for them first. The packing crew started separating certain damaged fruit loads by destination. Some still left the property. Some were composted. Some were never collected because the flock broke them down in place before they became a hauling job. The orchard crew learned to leave portable fence corridors clear during the final picking days. The poultry schedule began appearing on the same wall calendar as harvest and mowing. Nothing about the farm became perfectly circular. Feed trucks still came through the gate. Fuel still arrived. Cull fruit still left. The orchard still used modern pest management, mowing, machinery, and off-site composting when those tools made sense. The ducks did not erase any of that. They exposed a more expensive habit. The farm had been treating each problem as if it belonged to only one department. Fruit waste belonged to the orchard. Feed belonged to poultry. Manure belonged to poultry. Vegetation belonged to orchard maintenance. Land rent belonged to poultry. Cleanup labor belonged to harvest. Once Claire put those costs in the same field, some of them began interacting. That was the mechanism the ducks made visible. They were useful not because they performed one job perfectly, but because their ordinary behavior touched several jobs at once. They ate, they walked, they foraged, they produced manure, they laid eggs. Claire's contribution was not teaching them a new behavior. It was changing where that behavior happened, when it happened, and which farm costs were counted beside it. By the third fall, the rotation no longer drew visitors from the crew. The site had become normal. Portable fence appeared after a block was picked. Water moved forward every day. The shelter followed. The ducks spread between the pair rows, muttering and splashing through wet grass while Claire checked the surface behind them. Tom still watched the weather. If the soil became too soft, they moved the flock faster or skipped a section. If fallen fruit was scarce, the birds went somewhere else. If predator pressure rose, the rotation changed. The system worked because it was managed, not because nature had solved the farm for free. Late one afternoon, Claire was closing a gate when a delivery truck pulled into the lane. It carried duck feed. The driver handed her a smaller order than the farm would have taken during the same part of the season 3 years earlier. Behind the packing shed sat the old coal trailer. It was not empty because the farm had stopped producing damaged fruit. It was empty because that week's trial blocks had not filled it yet. Claire signed the feed ticket and looked from the truck to the trailer. For a moment, she remembered the first fall, when one vehicle had come in as the other went out. The farm still bought feed, it still hauled waste. But now those two movements were connected by a flock working beneath the trees. The coal trailer stayed behind the shed.